Fork.
Fuck.
It's fork.
All right, everybody. Welcome in and welcome back. I'm Hoosier Marine Mac, and today I've got a special video for you all. The topic of today's video, of course, is going to be over the Alien franchise, both in film and video game media alike. And more specifically, I wanted to take this time to share my concerns and voice my opinions on trends I've been seeing in recent films, and maybe draw attention to issues I've come across, maybe things that other content creators and videos haven't talked about. So, I obviously I'm just a guy here on the internet complaining, just yapping away into the void. And like the saying goes, no one can hear you scream in space. So, you know, for the disenfranchised fans out there, hopefully this video finds you well, and hopefully I can validate some of your concerns and opinions as well. Maybe I share the same grievances as you. But if not for nothing, hopefully this video can entertain you guys and keep you guys going through the day. And you guys can play it in the background while you're doing tasks around the house, doing chores and such. But yeah, I felt compelled to make this video. I felt that this is a good time. Probably the best time. We have a new Alien show coming out on Hulu called Alien Earth, and by now, by the time you guys are watching, it's probably already out. So you guys in the comment section can let me know if I hit the nail on the head or if I missed the mark completely, or if you guys want to take the time to share your perspectives. I'll take my time and I'll read through it all. And you're more than welcome to have a discussion in the comment section. If you guys like the video, please consider liking it and sharing it with your friends. But yeah, we're gonna be talking about a lot of topics here. Not everything I talk about is like so dire that it needs to be talked about, but obviously, there's a lot of talking points that you can go over with the franchise. It's been out for over 40 years now, so I'm sure there's going to be things that you guys want to have mentioned that maybe I overlook or don't mention at all. So in the comment section, please let me know, and I'll potentially make a follow-up video or a second video to this one. But yeah, I wanted to make this video and get it out there. It's more of a passion project right now. I'm not like a YouTuber by trade or anything, so all the editing and audio is probably going to be a little scuffed. So I do apologize in advance if it's a little rough around the edges, but once again, I wanted to get this out there for you guys and share my opinions and voice my concerns and hopefully entertain you guys and keep you guys going through the day. And yeah, without further ado, let's just jump into it. All right, guys. So to start off this video, I wanted to give a quick breakdown of the franchise, share a quick synopsis or a summary for anybody that hasn't watched the films or doesn't know what's going on in the universe. Don't worry, I'll do my best to break it down Barney style for you guys so you guys can get caught up to speed and not miss out on anything we're talking about. Basically, all you guys need to know is that in the original film Alien from 1979, it takes place in space, and the main set pieces are going to be the Weyland-Yutani Corporation commercial towing vehicle called the Nostromo, as well as the planet LV-426. LV-426 is going to be relevant later on for the sequel film, but for now, that's where the first film takes place, and that's all you need to know. Alright, so the crew of the Nostromo is awoken from a cryosleep to a distress signal originating from the planet LV-426, and the crew is compelled to go and investigate the source of the signal, looking for signs of life or anybody that needs help. Upon landing on the planet LV-426, the Nostromo encounters a mechanical malfunction of sorts, and they're forced to repair the ship on the planet. While those repairs are taking place, they send a couple members of the crew to go investigate the source of the signal, and upon finding the source of the signal, they discover a alien spaceship that had crashed on the planet. And once they explored that ship, they discovered an alien life form that had attached itself to one of the crew members named Kane. Once the creature attached itself to Kane, the remaining expeditionary team brought him to the Nostromo in hopes to remove it and conduct medical tests on him to figure out what's going on. They couldn't figure out what was going on. They sat there for a while, reminiscing and figuring out a plan of attack, and they figure out that the creature has acid for blood, and if they try to fuck with it, it'll just destroy the ship. So they don't mess with it. They let it do its thing, and Later, it removes itself from Kane's face, and they think everything's good, everything's kosher. And spoiler alert, everything's not good and everything's not kosher. Later on, the rest of the crew, they're all sitting down eating dinner and getting ready for cryo sleep, and Kane begins to convulse, and later his chest explodes, revealing the creature that we later know as the Xenomorph. After the dramatic appearance of the Xenomorph, it quickly scurried away from the scene of the crime, leaving behind all the remaining members of the crew in shock as they've just witnessed Kane die in front of them. They then formulate a plan to eradicate the Xenomorph from the ship, but unbeknownst to them, while they're formulating a plan, the Xenomorph is growing in size and lethality. The hunters will then later become the hunted as the Xenomorph proceeds to kill them one by one. Also, unbeknownst to the crew, some member of their team is not who they appear to be. Ash is actually a Weyland-Yutani android sent from the corporation to acquire this Xenomorph for weapons testing on Earth later on. After discovering the new size of the Xenomorph and after losing 2 more members of the crew, the remaining 4 members band together to attempt to kill the Xenomorph. During this time, they discover that Ash is also an android and that he had ulterior motives to bring the Xenomorph back to Earth for weapons testing. They can't have that, so they killed his ass, fucked him up real good. He's not a problem anymore. See you later, Ash. After Ash is gone, the remaining 3 members of the crew decide it's time to leave. They set the Nostromo on self-destruct and began collecting filters for their air system on the escape pod. In doing so, 2 more members of the crew die to the Xenomorph, leaving only behind Ellen Ripley and their beloved cat, Jonesy. Eventually, Ellen Ripley makes it to the escape pod with Jonesy in hand. After escaping the Nostromo and leaving behind her crew members, she then becomes comfortable enough to start undressing and getting ready for cryo sleep. It's not really much to look at, but I'm not going to complain. During this process, she discovers that the Xenomorph in fact actually escaped with her, and now she is frantic and goes to a closet to put on a spacesuit. Her new plan is to open the airlock and hopefully suck the alien into space. The alien's not going out without a fight, so she has to shoot it with a harpoon gun and then blast it with the afterburners of the escape pod. After she feels confident that the alien is no longer a threat, she starts prepping for cryo sleep, and that's where the movie basically ends. It must be noted also, this is also where the sequel film picks up almost immediately after 57 years of cryo sleep, but we'll get into those details next. Following the events of Alien, we go into the story of Aliens, 1986, still following the story of Ellen Ripley. She was just rescued from a deep space salvage team and brought back to a medical station orbiting Earth. There she gave an interview to a bunch of Weyland-Yutani executives where she described the events that occurred on the Nostromo and LV-426. During that interview, one of the executives, Burke, used that information to give commands to a bunch of colony members to go investigate the coordinates of the derelict spaceship on LV-426. Once the crew members reached the ship, they suffered the same fate as the Nostromo. One of the members had a facehugger on them and thus began the infestation of the planet with xenomorphs, ultimately leading to loss of communication with the colony altogether. Weyland-Yutani began launching an investigation, sending colonial marines and Ellen Ripley to go see what happened to the colony members. Once Ellen Ripley and the colonial marines landed on the planet, they were only able to discover one sole survivor named Newt, leading to believe that the rest of the colony members had been killed by the xenomorphs. They go through the entire facility looking for other survivors, but ultimately couldn't find any, leading to the atmospheric reactor. They discovered the xenomorph nest where most of the colonial marines will meet their demise, and ultimately the remaining survivors will escape through the APC. During their escape, they call for evacuation from the dropship, but during that call, the dropship pilot was attacked by a xenomorph and led to the crash of the aircraft on the planet, leaving the remaining survivors stranded on the colony. The remaining survivors took refuge in the facilities and began to formulate a plan for escape while also making their last stand. While taking refuge in the facility, Ellen Ripley and Newt were attacked by facehuggers, which were unleashed by Burke. Burke had ultimate plans to freeze their bodies with the xenomorph embryos inside and take them back to Earth for testing. That plan had failed. During this time, the xenomorphs became aware of the survivors' location and began to attack them. The remaining Marines took their last stand while fleeing to the remote operated dropship that was being controlled by the android. Most of them wouldn't make it. During this time, Newt was taken by one of the xenomorphs back to the hive, which was located at the atmospheric processor. It also must be noted that during this time, the atmospheric processor was going critical due to the fact that no one was left alive to maintain the facility. Ellen Ripley at this time used a tracking device given to her by Hicks to find the location of Newt within the hive. Ellen Ripley made a head charge attack into the hive, rescuing Newt while fleeing back to the dropship for escape. During this final act of the film, Ellen Ripley and the remaining survivors made it back to the Sulaco, where they discovered that the alien queen had been a stowaway on the dropship. Ellen Ripley then entered a power loader and fought the xenomorph queen, leading it to an airlock where she would eventually launch the alien queen into space. After the fight was over, the remaining survivors go into cryosleep, and that concludes this film. Following the story of Aliens, we go into Alien 3 of 1992. We're still following Ellen Ripley after she crash lands on the planet Fiorina, Fury 161, where she is the sole survivor from the Sulaco. Following the crash on Fury 161, Ellen Ripley is rescued by a group of prisoners and brought to a medical infirmary, awaiting treatment and rescue from Weyland-Yutani Corporation. During this time, a dog that belonged to one of the prisoners was snooping around the EEV and was attacked by a xenomorph facehugger. After a while, a xenomorph broke from the chest of the dog and began a murderous spree on the prisoners, killing them one by one. The remaining prisoners made a last stand in attempts to kill the xenomorph before Weyland-Yutani could show up to the planet. Unbeknownst at this time to anyone else, Ellen Ripley had a xenomorph queen inside of her chest. At some point, a xenomorph facehugger had impregnated her during her cryosleep. Ellen Ripley, now knowing that she has a xenomorph queen inside her, realizes that the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is only after the embryo. She then takes aim at the xenomorph that's wreaking havoc on the remaining prisoners, thus killing it just in time for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation to show up. Refusing being taken back for testing, she decides her best route is to jump into the pit of molten lead below her, killing herself and the xenomorph embryo inside of her. This basically concludes the rest of the film. There's not really much else to say. There's one surviving prisoner that gets taken away, presumably for testing, and then he's probably dead now, but that's basically the movie. Following Alien 3, we roll into Alien Resurrection of 1997. This is one of those films I sort of wish never happened. It's not really worth noting too much, but we're going to talk about it briefly. Ellen Ripley is cloned on a military ship somewhere in the solar system of Earth, and space pirates had trafficked some humans to be impregnated by the xenomorph queen that's inside of her. Somehow the scientists were able to create a xenomorph queen from Ellen Ripley, safely removing it, leaving both intact. Later they would use that queen to generate eggs, and the humans trafficked from the pirates to create xenomorphs. Those xenomorphs would eventually break containment and wreak havoc on the ship, killing most of the soldiers, leaving only the pirates and Ellen Ripley to escape. At this point, Ellen Ripley and the pirates, they have to make their way back to their ship. The ship that they're on is making its way back to Earth, so they got to get off before it gets there. There's not really much else to say about the story. It's pretty straightforward. All the events that take place, it's not really worth noting, but they get back to their ship, and there's a human-alien hybrid that's on the ship waiting for them. They suck it through a window somehow, using Ellen Ripley's acid blood to break a window, and it gets sucked out into space. This movie wasn't really that great. I don't recommend it to anybody. It's not a very smart movie, but it's part of the franchise nonetheless, so we're going to talk about it a little bit. Following Alien Resurrection, we go into the story of Prometheus from 2012. This story follows a group of archaeologists that discover a sign from the heavens above, outer space, somewhere out there. They follow that little map that they found, I guess, whatever you want to call it, to the supposed homeworld of their gods, the people that made them. Following the information found in the caves, Weyland-Yutani Corporation would fund a expedition that would go into deep space to uncover the location of the planet described on the maps found in the cave. Once the expedition reached the planet, they quickly explored the facility that they found, leading to their demise. Of the members of the expedition team, one of which is a android by the name of David. David doesn't follow orders very well or at all, and his actions lead to the downfall of the expedition itself. Once they began to explore the facility that they found, the expedition team would quickly discover that it was in fact an alien ship with weapons of mass destruction on board. David also discovered that there was a sole surviving crew member in the cockpit area where he would lead Mr. Weyland and other expedition team members to. In attempts to speak to this engineer, the engineer rips David's head off, beating Mr. Weyland with it and killing most of the team members in that room. The main character would eventually run and escape the ship, but they couldn't let the ship leave orbit or leave the planet because it was destined for Earth. So the expedition team crashed their ship into that alien ship, leaving it on the planet. There's not really much else to say about the movie. The main character ends up going and saving what's left of David, so he's a problem for the next film, basically. And that's pretty much it. Prometheus was a joke, too. I didn't care for this movie either. Following Prometheus, we go into Alien Covenant of 2017. In this film, we're on a colony ship that's en route to a planet that's hospitable for human life. During this time, they discovered a signal in deep space and went down to the planet to investigate. Once the crew reached the planet, they discovered the source of the signal was a crashed alien ship. Inside, they found Shaw's identification. She had, I guess, taken this ship with David from the Prometheus film and crash landed on the engineer's homeworld. This is where the creators of man actually started off, I guess, basically. During this time, members of the crew were stepping on giant piles of shit and releasing flying parasites that would infect their bodies. A few of the crew members ended up getting killed by, I guess they call them a backburster, basically a monster that just comes out of their back. And those things were killing them one by one until David comes to the rescue of the expedition team. Once David had rescued the remaining expedition team members, he would bring them back to his campsite somewhere on the planet, where they would eventually call for rescue from the ship that's out in orbit. Once the remaining expedition team was at the campsite, David would give them a false sense of security and lead them down to his lab where he was testing to create a new form of alien life that we would later know as the xenomorph. He's basically the queen xenomorph guy now, I guess. I don't know. It makes no sense. At some point, the captain of the expedition made his way down to the scientific lab with David, where he uncovered the body of Shaw and was impregnated by a facehugger, creating the first xenomorph. There's also a fight sequence between Walter, the other android, played by Michael Fassbender, where he's, fighting David. So there's, I guess, an excuse to have two Michael Fassbenders on screen at the same time for whatever reason. I don't know why, but yeah, there's that. Later in the film, the cargo ship that was coming to rescue the expedition team eventually made its way to the planet, where the expedition team would run to it, followed by what we presume is Walter, the other android, also being chased by the xenomorph that was wreaking havoc on the remaining crew members. They have a fight sequence on the cargo ship, killing it with one of the cranes that they have on board, and they make their way back to the colony ship and get ready to go back to sleep. During this final act of the film, the remaining expedition team get ready for cryosleep, but not before they discover that another xenomorph was loose on the ship. The remaining crew members go to kill it. They essentially launch it into space like they do in every other film, and they get ready to go back to sleep, where they uncover that who they presumed was Walter is in fact David, the asshole bad guy android, you know the one. Now he's in complete control of the colony ship. He's got all the colony survivors on board that he can just make all of his scientific experiments on, and it's basically the end of the film. It's not worth really watching. I hated this film too. Following Alien Covenant, we go into the film Alien Romulus of 2024. This film takes place on the Weyland-Yutani Corporation mining planet, somewhere out in space, where we meet our main character, Rain, and her android, Andy. So, off the bat, Rain and a group of her friends discovered a Weyland-Yutani scientific research station orbiting the planet that somehow no one else in the corporation was able to find, and no one else had gone to since. But they went up to the station with hopes of finding cryo-sleep beds so they could make a long trip to another planet where they were hoping for a better life. Once Rain and her bandit of friends made it to the station, they quickly found their cryo-sleep chambers they were looking for, but needed cryo-sleep fuel to get through their long haul ahead of them. They made their way to a research station where they found the fuel they needed, but when they took their fuel, it unleashed the facehuggers that were in the research station that were in cryosleep themselves. At this point, the bald chick got attacked by a facehugger where she was being impregnated by the xenomorph embryo. Her friends are all looking around. They don't know what to do to help her, so they wake up the android on the ground that's played by a CGI version of Ian Holmes. It's a really shitty version, actually. But he basically tells them that she's fucked, and then he points out that whatever's in her chest is going to turn into a xenomorph, and they finally discover that the original xenomorph from Alien 1 is hanging from the ceiling with a harpoon still stuck in his chest. So they see that, and they know that they're fucked too. At this point, the friends get together, and they use the cryofuel to freeze the facehugger to release it from the bald chick. She wakes up freaking out, and that's when they had the discussion that she's infected, and Andy says that she can't leave the ship. She's not having it. She runs off, and the guy that doesn't speak English very well zaps Andy with a cattle prod, knocking him down. At this point, they make it back to their ship, and they begin to leave the other friends behind on the station. At some point within the last 2 minutes, the xenomorph that's inside the bald chick bursts out of her chest, and she crashes the ship, conveniently enough, in a cargo bay that's open on the station. Yeah, believe that. Immediately following the crash, the friends that were left on the ship made their way to the exit hatch, where they discovered the alien cocoon right next to the door. The guy that doesn't speak English very well decided it was a good idea to stick a cattle prod inside and shock it, where he got struck by the tail and got melted by acid. It was a really stupid death, but we didn't know what he was saying half the time anyway, so it's probably for the best. But effectively, the pregnant girl, she makes her way out the door, and she's followed by the xenomorph that came out of the cocoon. Simultaneously, during this crash, Rain and Andy, with the other friend, were in the research area still with the android Rook, where he told them about a scientific experiment that would prolong the existence of human life in space, and they were compelled to go recover it. Eventually, the group led by Andy made their way to a doorway in the station, on the other side of which the pregnant chick was trying to get through. She was followed by the xenomorph, and Andy saw it, so he didn't open the door, where she was eventually taken away to the alien hive somewhere on the station. Eventually, the group made their way to the scientific research area where they found the experiment, and they were making their way off the ship at this point. While making their way through the rest of the station, they uncovered the xenomorph hive, where they also found the pregnant chick still alive. They rescue her, but in rescuing her, the brother of the pregnant chick got killed, and Andy was knocked unconscious once again. Once Rain and the pregnant chick escaped through the elevator going towards safety, Rain had a turn of heart and decided to go back for Andy. She left the scientific experiment with the pregnant chick and told her to go back to the ship. Rain would eventually meet up with Andy, and they would make their way back to the ship just in time to leave before the station crashed into the ring of the planet that they were orbiting. Now that Rain has rescued Andy and successfully brought him back to the ship, they start preparations for cryosleep. Unbeknownst to them, the pregnant chick had already injected herself with the scientific experiment, and would later give birth to an alien-human hybrid, similar to the alien from Alien Resurrection. During this final act of the film, the pregnant chick is killed by the baby that she gave birth to, and Rain is forced to attempt to expel it from the ship. She succeeds in doing so, and ultimately it's just her and Andy left to survive, and they go back into cryosleep and they make their way to Yavaga 3. This film, it did a lot of good things, but I think they missed the mark on quite a few others. So I would recommend it to be watched, but I don't think it's really deserving of very many high praises. All right, guys. So now that I've basically broken down the movies, I tried to be as brief as I could. I still probably talked a lot there, but I wanted to give you guys a little refresher in case you guys haven't seen the movies in a while or if you haven't seen them at all. But now we're going to go into the meat and potatoes of the film or of this video. I want to make sure that I covered my bases there with at least acknowledging what the movies were about, and now we'll just go on with my criticisms of them and all the things I kind of think that need to be worked on for future content from this franchise. So before I jump into heavily trashing on some of these films, I wanted to give praise to the franchise. As a whole, I would say most of the films portray the alien in a relatively familiar way, I would say, with the exception of maybe one or two. But as a whole, they definitely nailed the vibe. It's got the right atmosphere, it's got the right sounds. I just feel that as a whole, the writers and the directors, they went a different way with things that maybe caused more harm than good to the franchise as a whole. I think it's more or less just they spent more of their budget on casting rather than writing, especially with some of the later films. You'll have a lot of real large and well-known celebrities, but the origins of aliens, it was just a bunch of random misfits in the Hollywood universe. Like they weren't really well-known actors or actresses, so it was more of their debut into the space. So I think they need to go back to that in a way, and I'll talk about it later. But Romulus, I think they did a good job with that. At least they didn't cast too many well-knowns. All the people that were in the casting for that movie were unfamiliar actors and actresses, so I think they're kind of getting back to the basics in a way. But with that film alone, there's so many holes in it that I got to dedicate a little segment of the video just for that one alone, and you'll see why hopefully here soon. As we're going through and as I'm sharing examples from the films, I want to make the point clear that the franchise, the Alien franchise as a whole, tends to reuse the same plot devices and the same characters or certain lines from other films, and it's almost to the point where it's a trope. Everything is tropey as fuck. There's always some form of sabotage going on. There's always some issue with the androids. There's always AI on the ship that's fucking you over. There's always the Weyland-Yutani Corporation that is now the omnipotent presence that's overlooking everything that's going on, and it's more threatening than the xenomorph itself. At the end of the day, all those things I listed, like that is the core point of the films when the xenomorph isn't on the screen. And to me, I think that's a really cheap way to lessen the experience, especially for horror. As a horror fan, I'm not here for the drama. I don't care about relationships with the characters, like who can I trust, who's going to stab me in the back. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the xenomorph. And most of the time, that's the least threatening thing in the film. And it's especially true in the movies Prometheus and Alien Covenant. They should have just named those movies David, because that's really what it was about. It was basically just a Michael Fassbender flick, and I think those two films alone deserve no praise whatsoever. I mean, I will say, like, they look good, they sound good, they hit the vibe, but when you watch a movie for the story, or when you're playing a video game for the story and you're getting a shit story, that's what it is. I don't care if you polish it up and make it look or sound nice. It's a crap movie, and I think it was intentional with those two. And it's a shame because I think they were actually written and directed by the same people that made the original films. And, you know, maybe they were uninspired. They didn't have the imagination to produce something that was worth watching for like a timeless classic kind of situation. Like I will not go back 20 years from now and be thinking, oh, let me go watch Prometheus or watch Covenant. I could just skip those. And that's kind of a travesty as a fan of the Alien franchise. There should be no films or no form of entertainment that you're not willing to rewatch or re-engage yourself with. But the fact that those exist now, it's caused such a huge rift in the timeline that it's almost unforgivable at this point. And I thought they were going to churn things around with the Alien Romulus film, but it turned out that they were just doing all the same crap again. That movie is the biggest offender of reusing tropes or reusing lines and introducing characters from films that were made 30 years ago, and it just seems like they they had it so close, man. They just had it so fucking close, but they decided to go the route of, hey, Android bad, Weyland-Yutani Corporation bad, there's sabotage going on. All right, where are we going now? Oh, we got to escape the ship. Like that's like the same fucking thing. I could just rewatch it, or I could rewatch the original film and understand exactly what's going on in Romulus. But I don't know, man. It just seems like with Romulus specifically, I'm gonna be possibly talking about Romulus a lot. They're the biggest offender, and I think as a whole the movie was okay, but you're looking at it as a whole with the franchise, not just the film itself. In a vacuum, Romulus would be a successful film, and it probably is. I don't know what the box office is looking like or what it looks like for their profit margins, but as a whole, when you look at it, that film with the other films, it just causes more plot holes for all those other films, and I just can't get away from that. Like now, when I watch those other films now after watching Romulus, it lessens my enjoyment for those films now too. And I mean, there's tropes like the cornbread. Um, they brought back Ash as Rook now. Um, Even when the Andy android goes down the elevator shaft, he basically says the same line that Ellen Ripley said in Aliens, "Get away from her, you bitch." But he has like a stutter or whatever. All that stuff. If you're watching it for the first time, hey, that's awesome cinema. But we've seen that before. It's already something that's been covered, and now you're just retreading old ground and lessening the value of those older films. And also with Romulus too, or not the sequel, but also Romulus caused a pretty big hole for the rest of the franchise as well because you're getting the xenomorph from outer space when it should have been obliterated when the Nostromo blew up. I like the fact that they added the harpoon in the chest of the alien. I thought that was a good touch. It's like a callback to the original Alien where she shot it out the airlock and then the harpoon was sticking out of it. But looking at it now, it's like they didn't even do it right because now the harpoon is sticking the other direction in the film. Like it's like the harpoon is now facing the front of him instead of facing the back because he was looking at Ellen Ripley when he shot her, or when she shot him. Sorry, and looking at that now, it's like that's a huge mistake in my opinion. Like the prop designers or something fucked that one up, and also let it be known too. It's like if we're just picking up aliens from space like 20 years after the fact, what happened to the alien queen in Aliens? Like, how do we rectify that? Or even going further, with the original engineer that they discovered on LV-426 in the original film, there was a engineer that had a chest wound that we now know would have been a xenomorph leaving its body. What happened to that xenomorph? Did it just go away? Did it just disappear? Because evidently they could survive in space with no food or any life support for almost a quarter of a century, and they're still just as lethal as they were before. I think that's a big problem, especially if you're trying to make newer films or try to carry on the legacy of the Alien franchise, because now you have to answer those questions, and those answers aren't being met. They're just being convoluted with more bullshit that they're adding with the newer films. And yeah, and it makes you wonder too. It's like if because there's two films now with LV-426. It's like if that xenomorph was alive, how do you explain that the colony was able to survive on that planet for like 20 years and not have any run-ins with that xenomorph, or let alone not even find the LV-426 crash site where the overmorph or the facehugger eggs were at? Like, how do you rectify that? Now that we've introduced the fact that the alien from Romulus is the original alien, that just throws everything out the window in regards to uh, the structure of the other films, because now it's all based on that bullshit happening. So now we can only assume that that alien from the engineer is still out and about on LV-426 or whatever. I've just that's an example I wanted to really emphasize on, because now we can't go back. Now that Romulus is out and it's a really successful film, we can't go back to rewriting that. We can't fix that. And I don't I don't subscribe to the idea of going into fan-made comics or going into other forms of entertainment. I'm only looking at the official films, and based on the lore and the information that's presented there, that's how I'm judging the other films. That's where I'm going off of. If you could tell me like, hey, what happened to that alien in LV-426 through a comic, I don't care about that. That's irrelevant to me because it's not on the big screen. And I feel like a lot of you guys probably feel the same way. It's like if you guys are indulging or if you guys are finding yourselves entertained by the films and you guys are only watching the films, that's how it should be. You shouldn't have to go on other third party forms of entertainment to get the whole story. And that's another thing with Alien Covenant, I believe. They, instead of introducing all the characters of the ship beforehand, they just started the movie where they're getting attacked by, or they're getting hit by an asteroid or meteorite shower. And I guess at some point they made a whole YouTube documentary series or like an introduction series where they showed all the survivors, all the crew members. I think even James Franco was in there. He made no appearance in the actual movie itself, and I I will never watch those YouTube videos because I just feel like if it wasn't important enough to watch on the big screen, it's not important enough for me to go watch on YouTube. And I feel like you guys should feel the same way. Now, all this to say, I'm not trying to dissuade you guys from watching the films on your own. If you haven't seen them yet, they're on Hulu all together in one place, so I recommend checking them out. But if you're fans of the franchise like myself, you're probably better off just skipping Resurrection and just all the other movies altogether. Maybe even skipping Romulus as well. Just the first three movies were enough. You know, that was fine. But now we're going down a path where it just seems like it's never ending, and it also seems like at this point it's almost an insult to the fan base. The fans just aren't getting treated well here. I feel like they made Romulus. They did a whole bunch of nuanced callbacks to um, the original films with the cornbread, the Ian Holmes character being back in the game, uh, the original Xenomorph even with the harpoon. Then you had callbacks to the "get away from her, you bitch" phrase, like all that kind of stuff. All being said, that was only to appeal to the people that were familiar. If you're not familiar, you're not going to understand those references. If you watch the movie by itself and it's your first time watching an Alien film, all of that's brand spanking new, and you're not going to understand that those all have significant meaning for the other films. And you're not really going to maybe see what I'm talking about. So, once again, if you guys haven't seen those films, the ones that I've been listing, check them out. That way you're all caught up to speed because, you know, I'm just going to make references here that aren't going to make sense to you at this point if I haven't done so already. But ultimately, the point is like the writers, the developers, the directors, the showrunners for these films and games that have been coming out, it just feels like they're uninspired at this point because you wouldn't have films like Romulus with all these callbacks if it was original, you know, if they had their own ideas. But here we are 30 years after the original film getting the same one-liners from some android in an elevator shaft on Romulus. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. That's more or less my frustration with the franchise as a whole. But I'm gonna make other references here just to show more evidence of my work. But yeah, I feel like you guys are definitely not getting treated well if you're a fan of the Alien franchise. And if you're content with this, if you are perfectly fine with being treated like this by the showrunners and the directors, then hey, good luck with the other films. And I hope that you enjoy this TV show that's coming out because I've seen the trailer and I'm not impressed. I'm actually more, I anticipate more of the same, and I think it's going to be a rough ride for anybody that's expecting anything more. It's going to be more of the same crap, but it's not going to be any deeper than what we've been getting for the last couple of movies. So, yeah, if you guys want to just brush me off as somebody that doesn't have a clue what he's talking about, that's fine. But I still want you guys to go check out the movies and then maybe come back and we'll have this discussion in the chat, or in the comment section. But that's where I'm at. That's basically where I'm at with this. Now I want to break away from how I feel about the franchise and take more of an objective approach at it. I pointed out that androids were basically a villain at this point. For most of the movies, they turn out to be the bad guys or have some kind of ulterior motive that causes harm to the humans around them. And I think this trend started with the original film, and it wasn't carried out for all the films, especially with Aliens and as well as with 3 and Resurrection. They didn't do that as well, but it's definitely more common now with Prometheus and Covenant and Romulus. So they brought that trend back for whatever reason. But going back to it, androids are the bad guys, and it's no more clear than with Ash from the original film. He not only is the scientific officer of the ship, the Nostromo, but he also was full aware of the quarantine procedures in place for the possibility of some kind of life form contaminating the ship. And in this case, it was attached to the crew member named Kane. Um, in that instance, Kane not only, or not Kane, Ash not only left his station at his computer, he actively went to the airlock and let them in after being told not to by Ellen Ripley. So I can't find a better example of how androids will just basically do everything they can to, uh, tear the rug out from under you and fuck your situation up. Like, there's no reason for that to have happened, but watching the movie now, it kind of makes sense. He had orders from Weyland-Yutani to get it on the ship by any means, so he was doing what he was ordered to. But whatever the crew members on the ship were telling him to do, it was superseded by Weyland-Yutani. So that's one of those cases where the androids are more of a threat than the xenomorphs, because it could have been, anything else. It could have been like an airborne contaminant. It could have been something that was viral and was spread throughout the rest of the ship. But, knowing what we know now, that's where this trend started. It started with Ash, and it proceeded on with the Prometheus and the Covenant films with David, and as well with Andy and Romulus in some way, shape, or form, and even Rook as well. There's two androids in that film. But with all this being said, androids aren't always the bad guys. Like, there's movies like Aliens and Resurrection and even 3 where the androids actually act to help you out more than anything else. They don't have ulterior motives where they're trying to just fuck over all the survivors or all the crew members around them. But in more recent films, that seems to be the trend that they're trying to emphasize, that androids and the Weyland-Yutani Corporation are the bad guys. More so, they're more dangerous, more so than the xenomorphs themselves. And specifically with Prometheus and the Covenant movie, those two movies, you're following basically David most of the time. He's going around like a cat, knocking things off furniture, and then looking at the owners like, are you going to clean that up? Like, that's basically the vibe I'm getting from David the entire fucking time. And every time that he had a scene, he was doing something sinister. He was always playing with something that he wasn't supposed to be touching. He was actively trying to sabotage the rest of the crew. He even infected one of them with one of the things, the vials or the vases that they got from the ship itself. And none of that was being ordered by Weyland-Yutani. And shit, you even had Weyland himself was with the ship. So unless he was telling David, hey, go fuck shit up so when I get out of this fucking cryo bed, I'll get eaten by a monster that you created or something. Like, that makes no sense. Like, why would they do that with those films? And, like, time and time again, they keep on doing that. And I wished it would stop, but with the most recent film, Romulus, they did the same fucking shit. They made they brought back Ian Holmes as Rourke or Rook, and they made him into, the bringer of devastation for the future. He basically created a scientific experiment that was a fluid based from the xenomorph DNA, and it would alter humans, and it basically turned us into monsters. Hence the alien mutation thing that you see at the end of the film. They're not good guys, obviously, and there was a moment there where I thought Andy from Romulus was going to follow the same trend, but luckily enough, Rain was able to remove that chip from him, and he was kind of back to his normal self, I guess. But I wouldn't say that's a very smart play. I don't think the movie had really intelligent writing as a whole, looking back at it. So, looking at that, I think the whole intention was to make androids bad, Weyland-Yutani bad, xenomorphs not that big of a deal. Don't worry about the xenomorphs. Just worry about what David's doing in the background, or worry about what Rook is cooking up in the lab. And those examples, those are shining examples of why I think that the writers are trying to push this idea of why we have to worry about androids and the corporation more than the monster hiding in the vents. And that to me is not horror. That's not even like really good writing. I think it's okay if you're writing a drama or something that has a lot of heavy relationship dialogue where you're talking between people, but with the way that the Alien films are portrayed, you're moving too quickly between scenes and you're not really able to focus on character development. So the whole idea of androids being such a big pivotal character in the story, it shouldn't exist. Not as heavily as it does. And I think as if they continue this trend, which they already are because they released the trailer for the show, the main character is not only female, she's also an android. So uh, there's that. There's more androids. So I suspect there's going to be some drama with that, but we haven't seen it yet. It's not out yet, but I anticipate it being more of the same bullshit that we've been getting. And then speaking of the same bullshit we've been getting, we keep on getting references to the cornbread. We not only got it in the first film, but we got it in the second and the third, and then once again in Romulus. For whatever reason, they decided to stop doing that for the other films, but there were a couple moments, at least in Resurrection, that I thought that they were going to do a little callback to the cornbread. Evidently, they decided to, squash that whole tropey fucking thing, but I at least appreciated it at its time as like a little small nod to the original film, maybe a little small little Easter egg that only fans would pick up on. But yeah, it's something I noticed. At least in the first film, they're all sitting down eating dinner. Someone's mentioning cornbread in the background. You don't really see it, but they mention it. Then in the sequel, Aliens, they're sitting down in the gallery or the galley, and all the Marines are eating. And one of them asks, "What are you eating?" And then he's like, "Cornbread, I think." And then it says, "Eat up, it's good for you." That whole line. But that was in the sequel. Then you had the third movie. They didn't mention cornbread, but when Ellen Ripley goes into the cafeteria where all the prisoners are at, they're all eating. She's holding a tray that actually has a piece of cornbread on it. You won't notice it unless you're looking for it, but she's actually holding like the most perfect square of cornbread I've ever seen in my life. And they don't say anything, they just show it. Um, those little moments, like those are things you pick up on as a fan. Those are little things you look for, and it's like something you can appreciate. It's like a little, like I said, it's a nod to the artwork of the movies before, and I do appreciate that kind of stuff. But then when they did it with Romulus, I already mentioned Romulus before, but I'm gonna keep on doing it. With Romulus, they brought in the cornbread. By itself, not a big deal, but being that it's a part of all the other tropes that they brought back into that movie, that's a movie based on other movies. Like every little thing is just something pulled from some other film, and to me, I think the cornbread needed to stop there or before that. I don't know why they decided to bring it back, but like I said, they didn't do it for all the other films. In fact, there was only one other scene in Resurrection where they're actually sitting down eating. That's another trend that they do. They like to have everybody sit down and eat. I guess that's their way of introducing the characters in a way, getting to know their personalities and such. But there was a scene where Ripley's sitting down eating with one of the scientists, and he corrects her on how she pronounces fork, and then she looks kind of sad at the end. I thought that was kind of funny, but it just another instance of them bringing back more of the same crap from other films and just kind of putting it in. Not that I have a problem with cornbread. I actually like cornbread, but now that it's been kind of ran dry, this joke's kind of getting old. It's played out at this point. Now, I'm mentioning the android being a female in the TV show. I'm doing that intentionally to bring up another really trending topic that they seem to have in all these films, and that is that the main character is almost always, if not always, female. And, I have no problem with women. I love boobs. Shout out Sydney Sweeney. But for the most part, I don't think this is a good idea for these movies. I think unless they're going to really portray these women as women rather than androgynous creatures that, can look like a man in the right light, I don't think that sticking with the sickly looking, small, frail females is the way to go. And I think that with this TV show coming out, they're going to make more of the same mistakes because from what I've seen in the TV show, she's got like the whole bowl cut going for her hair being really short. She's really frail and skinny and pale. And it's kind of like I'm looking at the same character from all the other films. Like we've already had that flavor. Let's try something different. All right. Now, I think also it's intentional because if I had to guess, based on the Romulus characters they chose to cast for this, two of those characters or the actresses, they actually star a role in the Last of Us television show, which, if you guys know, it's riddled with a lot of DEI woke bullshit. And I wouldn't be surprised if those people being casted in this film that had a major role in that. And then it also kind of makes me look back at other decisions that the writers have made. Looking at how they treat the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. Usually, typically, woke leftists are going to be against corporations. I mean, most people don't like big corporations to begin with, but that's kind of like a staple for that idea there. And you got, what do you got? You got androids that are basically humans. When you boil it down to it, they resemble humans. So when you think of androids, you think of humans. Humans bad because they have greedy and selfish intentions, and they're evil and they do sinister things behind the scenes. So now you're thinking, okay, humans are bad or men are bad because you're not having men roles. So now that's the idea that's imprinted on me, is that maybe it's all intentional and it has some kind of political or social agenda behind it, that they're not casting male leads. And prove me if I'm wrong, I guess, but um, that's where my headspace is at on that. I think that it's intentional, and I think it is a little bit political when it gets down to it. But you, as the average viewer, probably won't pick up on those little things and maybe not obsess on it as much. But that's kind of something that I'm seeing as a trend here, and I think there's a reason for it, and I think that reason is sinister by nature. Because looking at it too, it's like, why not do male leads? Why not portray some more colonial Marines and have Hicks involved? Like, why did they kill him off in the third film? And then looking back at it too, Sigourney Weaver is actually really against guns, and hence in the third movie, Alien 3, there were no guns whatsoever. They were using fire and axes and stuff. They didn't have a gun in this entire movie. So I think there's a reason that they're choosing to go the route that they are with their lead characters, and I think it's deeply affecting the rest of the franchise. Like, once again, there's no reason there can't be a Marine on screen, or a squad of Marines, or have an entire franchise or entire movie that's dedicated to the colonial Marines, or a military faction similar to it fighting the xenomorphs. Like, looking at it from a guy's perspective, that's awesome shit. Like, you want to see guns, you want to see explosions, you want to see aliens getting killed, a common enemy, and you don't have to worry about some fucking android behind your back stabbing you. When they make it a female character, you also have to limit your writing. You're kind of hamstrung on the idea of, like, okay, well, this person is frail, so we can't go outside of the realm of reality here. She can't, pick up a person and carry her, or carry the person on her shoulders and run down a corridor running away from a xenomorph. They're a small person. They're not going to be able to pick up other people that are hurt or on the ground. So, obviously, you're not going to be able to do certain scenes with that character. With a man, you can get away with so much, because also, looking at it too, you can also do more to the character. You can cause more harm to them, because let's be real, most people don't have empathy for men in any shape or form. Like, we don't care about emotions. They don't care about how you feel. A man is there to fucking do work and be the protector. That's their sole purpose. That's what their image is, and they're not taking advantage of that. They're really not. And there's so many opportunities to do that. They could put so many other shows out or other films out that portray Marines or a male lead that is handling business like a man should, but they keep on doing things with these females that almost break the laws of reality too, because it's like, in certain situations, a woman's not going to be able to fight off a xenomorph that's 3 times her size when men are falling to the same creature. Like, let's be real here. Like, oh, we're winning by wits. Like, the females are just smarter and can outthink the xenomorph, but all the men are dumb and dead now. Like, come on. Like, that needs to stop. All of that shit with the casting female only leads for these shows, it needs to stop. Honestly, and I'm only thinking this because I think it's intentional, and I think it's sinister by nature, because I do think that the director or the writers or everybody involved in making these films, I think they have some kind of DEI or some kind of agenda behind the scenes that they're not really being too obvious with. But when you picture everything together, the overall idea becomes a little bit more clear and obvious. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's where my headspace is at. So hopefully I'm not losing anybody there, but that's something I think needs to be addressed, and it's an issue that I've been having with these shows. Moving on, I think it's really important that we really seriously take a look at the franchise and maybe consider adding more of the Colonial Marines into it. There's so many video games out there. Like I keep listing them. Like you got Dark Descent, you got Fireteam Elite, you got Colonial Marines, the actual game. There's no reason that those games should be successful when they're portraying men and Marines doing business, because there's also female Marines involved, but there's no reason that those kind of films can't exist today. Like, we had one film with it, and it was really successful, and honestly, I think it actually propelled the franchise forward further than the first film itself, because it has action, it's got horror, it's got all the things you want as a guy. So like if you're not into the whole idea of following around Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley, you can at least get behind the idea of having a bunch of guys with guns on screen at all times. And I think this franchise would do well if it decided to do that again and actually emphasize more of the military and more male leads. Like, and that's the other thing too. You had characters in Aliens like Sergeant Apone. Such a cool fucking dude, bro. Like, that was the coolest character out of the entire squad of Marines besides Hicks and maybe Hudson. And he died off relatively early in the movie, but dude, his character from the movie inspired Sergeant Major Johnson from Halo. Believe it or not. Without Sergeant Apone from the Aliens franchise, we wouldn't have Sergeant Major Johnson in Halo. We wouldn't, like, straight up. So, the fact that that was such an important thing to have in the movie and they stopped doing that altogether, I wonder what other things we could have had if they stayed with that idea or kept those themes in the Alien franchise together. Like, we could have way better Halo games even. Who knows? Like, if you guys are Halo fans, you guys know how sad that shit is right now. And if I already mentioned The Last of Us, there's no reason not to, compare the two there as well. But yeah, dude, it's so sad that they just can't stick with like the badass Marines, or even in scenes in Aliens, there was Ellen Ripley being a badass. She's holding it down in the hive, killing all these fucking xenomorphs and attacking the queen. Like, that was some badass shit. Of course, like, obviously Ellen Ripley, like, she's supposed to be a badass character because she's the main character, but just like picture anybody else in that role and it would have still been just as badass. And I just don't understand why they don't just do that. Like, also, if they are inspired by anything I'm saying, anybody that's listening, if you want to make a movie, I think you should cast Sydney Sweeney as the main lead. If we're going to continue this trend of females being the main leads, put somebody up there that actually has a set of tits on her. Picture her holding it down in the hive, fighting a bunch of xenomorphs, spraying from the hip, shooting all the things that come in front of her, and the whole time you got a close-up look of the jiggle effect. Holy shit, dude. That would sell tickets immediately. You guys can give me credit for that too, by the way. But yeah, dude, there's no excuse for that. Like, I don't know why they just keep on doing the same things over and over again. But it's the same bullshit. It's literally the same bullshit. I didn't realize it until now, guys, but I was saying bullshit a lot. I do apologize, but there's a way we can fix this for the rest of the video. Even if you guys want to restart the video from the beginning, we can turn this into a drinking game. Anytime that I say bullshit or franchise or xenomorph, you take a drink. All right? Let's have some fun with it. Let's not, get all butthurt about things that I've been saying, but, you guys can turn something fun out of this. But before I wrap up this video, I want to make a couple more points, and then we'll do our little outro, I guess. But ultimately, the whole idea is that I'm not a fan of the direction the shows and the movies have been going. I think that there's been so many opportunities for them to make better decisions, and I don't know if it's a lack of imagination from the writers or poor direction from the directors, or maybe they're being influenced by the showrunners and the producers. Maybe they're pushing an agenda on the fan base in some indirect way here. But I mentioned the Colonial Marines for a reason too. Like, I think there's no excuse now not to make a Colonial Marines movie or make a spin-off of the sequel film Aliens from the original film. Make a sequel of what happens to the Sulaco when it's floating in space with a bunch of xenomorph eggs from the Queen that's somewhere floating off in space as well. Like, because obviously if there is a reason that Ellen Ripley and all the other survivors got ejected from the Sulaco, there's got to be more of those eggs on the ship itself. So make a movie now, because you've already made Romulus that tore a bunch of holes in the plot. Now that we know that the alien can survive in space forever, you can go back in time now, make a movie, kind of like how they did with Romulus, and they could fuck up the story a little bit more here. but they can make a Colonial Marines movie where they're going on the Sulaco now to retrieve any personnel that may be left behind or find out what happened to the crew, and then they have to fight off a bunch of the xenomorphs. And guess what? You could stay with the same trend of having the main character being a female. And like I said, Sydney Sweeney is the perfect role. And if she needs shooting lessons, I'll play as Hicks. That's all I'm saying. I'll take that lead or I'll take that role. Sign me up. But yeah, there's no reason that they're going the way that they are with these films because I'm getting so sick of the androids and the Weyland Yutani Corporation being some character that's always influencing the entirety of the movie. Like it just it gets so fucking dry at this point, drier than the fucking cornbread, and it's sad because they've had so much time and so much money and the thing is too with most of these films, the way that they end the films, they end it in a way where we're not expecting a sequel or a follow up, but they just make one anyway. And every time that they apply a new sequel now, it just kind of deteriorates and takes away from what the other films have done. Because it doesn't matter how many one-liners that you bring back or how many tropey uh, things that you put in your newest films that are from the other films. It doesn't matter how many times you do that. It still feels generic. It feels like it's not an original piece, and it just feels like it's just a movie for the sake of being a movie. And as a fan of the franchise, as a fan of Alien and horror and sci-fi and space in general, because let's be real, like without films like that, like growing up, I never would have been involved in or inspired to go and play Halo or play others like video games similar to that, or even like I have an interest in space travel. Like I like the idea of traveling through space. I think it's a cool concept. I wonder if there's life out there that's in a near solar system close to ours and we can visit them one day. But you know, the whole concept is kind of lost on us now because they're making movies that are kind of all over the place. Like I can't focus on one thing. It's like if it's going to be a sci-fi film, let's see more of the sci-fi stuff. Let's see the space travel. And when I say sci-fi, I'm not talking about androids or AI like Mother or Father, because they did that whole generic thing with the Resurrection movie where they instead of having Mother as the ship on board AI, they turned him into Father, which was so stupid because Mother is an acronym and it actually stands for something. So I wonder what Father would have stood for. Probably shitty movies. I don't know. I don't know what to say there, but yeah, it just once again, they've had so many opportunities to make something great, and it's just always more of the same, just polished up a little bit for the newer generation of viewers. And I think they're just forgetting about all the people that have stuck with the franchise since the beginning. And here I am as a fan here, shit posting and complaining, and most of you guys have probably tuned out by now, but if you haven't, thank you for staying. I do appreciate your viewership, and I hope that I've been able to entertain you guys or at least inspire you guys to go off and do great things and maybe use some of my words of wisdom to inspire others and maybe make a change in the industry. But yeah, I don't think we're going to get much of anything better here with this franchise. I think we're almost at the end of it, and especially how influential it is looking at what they've done with the trailer for this show coming up, but not only with the show for this franchise, they've also had a trailer release for the Predator Badlands film, and they have, guess what, an android in it. So, yeah, it's just like they get their fingers engraved in everything that we love, and they just fuck it up so that no one can enjoy it. And now we're just stuck here with a trash story and nothing else to really look forward to. Because I'll be honest, like, I'm not going to go run out and see the next film. I'm not. Like, I was really excited for Romulus because when I watched the trailer, I thought, okay, they're going back true to form, back to the basics. And I was right. I'm sorry I was because they took every opportunity in Romulus to take all the good things and all the great one-liners from the other films and they just threw it all together like a fucking like a stew, like a stew of just bad movie one-liners and terrible action sequences and man, it just makes you feel dumb as a viewer, right? Like I don't know about you guys, but like I think that's kind of insulting when they do that kind of shit. At least to that severe of a degree. I think they could have toned it down a little bit and it would have been a little bit less insulting. But yeah, with especially with Romulus, there's just too much of the same old shit in it and it once again, guys, it's bullshit. There you go, take a drink. But yeah, I don't know what else to say, man. I've been rambling on here for a minute. I still have to do a lot of editing on this video. Hopefully, I can get it out in time. You guys will know better than I do at this point. By the time that you guys are viewing this, it's already out. So, I'm going to try to wrap things up here. But I do appreciate, once again, all of you guys for staying, sitting through all my bullshit, listening to me flap my lips and complain and cry about things that don't really matter in life. So, you guys are great people. You're more than welcome to stay. So, if you guys like this, please consider sticking around, subscribing to the channel. If you guys like this content, let me know in the comment section, and I'll try to provide more of it or similar to it. And if you guys want me to go more in depth on certain things, I could possibly do a follow-up video, but this is pretty much an impromptu video for me. I really don't have any notes here. I'm just kind of shooting from the hip and going off the cuff here. So on the next one, I'll definitely do a better job of formulating a plan and breaking my ideas down a little bit better for you guys. But yeah, like I said, I can't thank you guys enough for staying through this video and watching it to the end. And I do hope that everybody that's still here is having a great time, enjoying life, being safe, staying out of trouble. And I do hope that we'll see you guys in the next one. But until then, take care of yourselves.
Get away from her, you bitch!